The views, opinions, and representations expressed on the Kagos Radio Network and its website are those of the host, guests, and participants. UFO Talk Radio can, but does not necessarily promote any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These shows are for entertainment purposes only, and they are not intended to treat or diagnose and/or claim to cure any disease or condition, or give any medical or legal advice. All music is purchased and owned by LGA Broadcasting.
I got the windows rolled down, got the radio up, and I'm heading out of Vegas tonight. And it's a 1:30 on a 4-day run, and the desert is a welcome sight. I can see you there in that dress you wear, and it's keeping my foot on the gas. I drink a gallon of Joe just to make it back home and hold you in my arms at last.
Are you ready? What you are about to experience is real. Right along with us. From deep in the desert of Nevada, The Glenn Larry Show.
And are you with me, everybody? I do welcome you guys all to the show. Everywhere you may be, zone or state or county or country. I know we're hitting a lot of people out there. Canada, we want to say hello to you out there, and you're already up and going on us. Thank you kindly very much for that. To all my low-powered operators out there and AM and FM, thank you for carrying the show, by the way. LP stations are really trying to survive these days, but they're doing well. I'll tell you whatever. Okay, time zone you're in. Remember who we are, K-Ghost Radio, UFO Talk Radio, K6RCL, Dennis in Galita, ham operator, thank you so very much. And to all the ham operators and radio clubs, thank you very much. And Facebook and that subscribe to us, thank you so much. Along with YouTube, we have a special guest on tonight. As you see, we're talking about UFO abductions and being pulled, being taken. We've talked about it before on our show. We've had other guests on, but this gentleman is unbelievable. His story is unbelievable, and he's got a book coming out. We'll talk about that too, but we'll be back right after this.
There's no typical meth user. I was from an upper middle class family. Meth is terribly addictive. My first time using it, I was hooked. There was no turning back. I lost my job. I was homeless. I never thought I'd see my family again. I have a great fear of meth because it took so much of me. I mean, it took everything. Meth took over my soul.
Visit our website at drugfree.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
They come to you when you're a young person, and they attempt to contact you in any type of form or something that would not scare you. Sometimes they slip, and you see for what they really are at night. They come during the daytime also. Are they a friend? Is it someone that, as a child, you would play with and are not there? You've heard about it, and it's been out for years, and it's been happening for years and years and years. Now, since the media has really gotten to be something which you can, these stories come out much, much faster, much, much better, and people aren't hiding it anymore. They're talking about it. You know about UFOs, you know about abductions, you know what it's all about. Being pulled, being taken, and you don't want to go. And maybe you're confused. Maybe you're going to go for a dream ride. Who knows what it's all about? But the gentleman that I have on the line knows all about that. And his name's Matthew. And Matthew, I hope you get this right. deLellis, is that right?
deLellis.
deLellis. I got it closely. God, yes. You're a retired professional photographer, chef, business consultant, of course, and you live in the rural hills of Texas. My goodness gracious. You have a wife, Diana? and you have a cat
Yes.
named Lily Pickle. I
correct.
love it. And you are a geobiologist. What is that all about? Let's start off with that.
Geobiology is um, the science of finding disturbance in the ground or the area around you in your environment,
Mm-hmm.
and that can come from dirty electricity. It can come from Wi-Fi. It can come from underground water,
Hmm.
ore deposits, all kinds of different things that influence our environment
Right. Right.
and our health.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we use dowsing to find those those problems, and then
Very common. Very common to use that device.
yep, and then we use various methods to mitigate or neutralize the effects.
Wow.
That's what geobiology does.
On what we're talking about tonight, being pulled from the visitors, are the aliens, are who may they be? When did it first start? And I want to hear some of your story. Would you go ahead, please?
Well, I've always called them the others.
Oh, the others.
Um,
Okay,
the
that's
others,
good.
and this is a generational thing for my family. Started with my mother
Mm-hmm.
back in the mid to late 1920s when she was about 5 years old. And for me, it's my earliest memory, my very earliest memory when I was just a baby.
Hmm.
I remember some things. So, and this has been ongoing through my entire lifetime now. I'm 71 at this point. So this has
Wow.
been going on for many decades. And it's taken me that long just to kind of uh, put it all together and for the blocks, the memory blocks that get installed, for those to break down and for me to get a coherent picture.
When you, as you're you're very young when this happened. How old were you?
Those earliest memories are when I was about 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was about 5, um, then some really significant things started to happen with 3 individuals that used to show up into my house,
Was it?
and
Was
come to the bed of myself and my brothers as
oh,
well.
okay. And so your brother also had experiences with this.
Everybody in my family has had experiences,
Right.
and their way of dealing with it is, everybody deals with it differently. Um, my younger sister is kind of afraid. My younger brother is like a total security fiend.
Mm-hmm.
And my older brother, he just, and he's not with us anymore, but he was angry about the whole thing and just acted out. I was the only one who sort of was able to absorb or deal with the reality in a coherent way, I think. And that's why, I'm able to describe what happened along the way.
We're going to go into that, but let me ask you this one question. Do they
Sure.
bother any of the siblings right now?
I don't think so.
Hmm.
I don't think so.
Have you talked
I
about it with
think,
them?
yeah, I think they've gotten what they need
Mm.
or what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
My experience too has shown me that our response to their incursion makes a difference. And at a certain point, there's no benefit for them.
Mm.
They have a whole agenda, of course.
Oh yeah.
And
Right.
if it's not going to benefit them, then they don't continue on.
So
So,
they visit your first visit. What happened?
well, my very first memory is pretty odd and strange. I'm in a like a clear crib,
Mm.
sort of like an enclosure, and I kind of turn my head, and there's a soft surface that I'm on, and I'm just a baby.
Mm.
And I sort of reach up and I grab a hold of the top of this kind of clear crib or whatever, container, and sort of pull myself up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wearing like a white, sort of soft gown of the same material. And as I look out over this room that is dimly lit, kind of I can't see any source of light, but it's sort of ambient light. And the walls are curved. I can see that there's rows of these enclosures, and so there's a bunch of, this is a room full of individuals like me.
Hmm.
And I look over, and there's another what appears to be a little girl standing up, just like I am, and she's got dark curly hair.
Mm-hmm.
And she's about the same size I am. Her eyes are bigger than usual. They're larger than usual, and they're like sapphire blazing blue.
Beautiful.
And we exchange. There's communication between us. Obviously, and when our eyes meet, there's communication, and there's a familiarity with this person. I seem to know her, or I feel attached to her. I'm connected to her in some way. And so as I look out, I see at the end of the room, there's these ramps that go up on both sides that are kind of molded into the structure. And then there's some glass, and it goes up to sort of a little platform, and there's some glass windows. And I can see through those windows, there's like a bunch of lights and gauges and stuff on the back wall. And then there's some beings, and they're like the Greys. They're sitting at control boards, and so I'm looking at this, and I'm not really thinking anything. And I look over and I see against the wall, the other wall to the right, there's a formed seat that is into the wall, and there's a being sitting there with this really long face. And he's sitting there with his feet, I guess they're feet, up on the platform where the chair is, and his knees come up to the top above his head. And I'm looking at this creature, and when he sees me looking at it, he stands up, and I can see that he's got kind of a oblong body too. So he's very insectoid looking. And as he starts to move toward me, I hear this buzzing sound. And then that's the last I remember.
Wow.
So that's a pretty weird first memory
that you
to
got.
have.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
embedded.
weird first memory.
That's embedded.
And that's the very first memory I have in this life.
Then what?
Well, if we want to fast forward to when I was about 3 or 4, I had this odd thing that I thought all the adults around me were aliens or insects.
Ooh.
I thought that they were shape shifting into a human form when I was around, but they were actually like that insect guy. And I used to come home from kindergarten. I'd sneak in the house to try to find my parents or other people in their insectoid form. I could never catch them that, obviously, but that's an odd thing for a 3 or 4-year-old to be thinking. So then when I was about 5, we moved from a small house in Maryland to another house. And the whole upstairs of the house was one room. And that's where me and both my brothers were.
Like a big attic type of thing?
Yeah, well, it was like the top floor had no wall. It was just a big attic room. Yeah.
Get it. Hold on.
And so my dad, and there it had windows at each end. and my dad built a desk and all that so we could do our homework or whatever. And my bed was at the other end of the room, and I could see out the window right there. It was right next to the window. And as you came up the stairs in that room, just when you came up the stairs on the left, there was a doorway, like a small doorway. It was about maybe 3 or 4 feet tall. And it led to a crawl space or it ran the length of the room. And we used to store things in there,
Access
items.
covered more or less.
Yeah, I mean, it was a storage spot, and it's really hot in the summer and really cold in the winter. I never went in there to play or anything. But when I was about 5 years old, in the middle of the night, between like midnight and 3, these individuals would come through that door. And I called them the Three Georges. From the very first day, I don't know why I decided to call them the Georges. You're 5 years old. Yeah. It makes sense, right?
Yeah. So was it George 1, George 2, George 3, or just George? Everybody was George?
No, everyone was just George. They were the Georges.
I can see that.
And the oddest thing about them, and they were about 3 feet tall, and they were all white. And they looked, with the bulbous head and the big eyes and stuff. But the most bizarre thing about them was that they weren't like triplets. They were like copies. They were exactly alike, and they communicated telepathically. So they would come over to my bed and they would communicate with me, mind to mind. And at first I thought, well, maybe they were ghosts, like Casper the Friendly Ghost, right? As a kid. Yeah. But they were solid, and so I kind of gave that up. Okay. And they would come over to my bed and they would, sit down and they would get me to go do stuff with them in the house. The other thing about them is they were very, very stealthy. They could move around inside the house or wherever they go, and they never made any noise, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
They were extremely humorous to be around and very playful, and they treated me really, really well. And so they engaged me in all kinds of shenanigans in the house, which after a while, it became like the running joke or the running story. When something weird would be found in the morning, my mom would say, "Oh, I guess the Georges were here," or "I guess George was here."
I got that.
It was just like those things that happened.
But this is very common, folks.
Yeah, it is. I come across this now because I've done a lot of research too, on my own. Right. Because I've tried to find out. Well, I'm having this experience. Does anybody else have this kind of experience? And there does seem to be a correlation in the population that many people have seen these kinds of creatures or beings.
Yes.
And they were extremely likable and affable. They're great playmates, and I loved them. I mean, they were my friends, and we were interacting with them seemed to happen in a kind of suspension of time and reality. It was like a whole different reality in which we were communicating in. So, that was a positive experience.
Did they come around often, like every other night? Did they come around the daytime?
They came often enough, and the Georges only came at night.
Okay.
And they came often enough. I'd say maybe once a month, or every month or two. Yeah.
Would they tire you out? Would they tire you out so you're even groggy in the morning? You want to go to school or whatever? I mean, how does that affect you? I mean,
well,
you're playing all night long.
Yeah, they would. They were always concerned whether I understood what we were doing and how, if I understood the game. And they also were sensitive to the fact when it looked like I was just kind of getting overly tired or whatever, that it was enough.
Okay.
And so they
Yep.
take
do.
me back upstairs and tuck me in bed and bid
Mhm.
me farewell and go back through that door. And you know, I looked in that area, in that space, over and over and over again, trying to find some uh, evidence of their existence in there, and I never did. And I was pretty concerned about it too, because I knew how hot it was in the summer and how cold it was in the winter, and I was worried if they had food or water, whatever,
Wow.
you know.
Yeah, they're very good at that.
Um,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, yeah,
It's like they had opened a porthole of some sort to
uh-huh,
pop in and pop out.
uh-huh,
And they're with
uh-huh,
you and they're having fun with you. And
right,
then it becomes more educational and things start
yes,
to change. Am I right?
yeah.
All right, let's talk about that.
Well, then other sort of slightly different beings showed up.
Mm,
More like the grays that you
mm-hmm.
are described in, in the modern
Right,
vernacular.
the working bees.
Um, and these beings would come to my bed and my brother's beds. I would hear my brothers, crying out or screaming or
Mm,
and I would ask questions like, well,
what do you do
what are
now?
they doing? And I would get the answer was, well, they're okay. They're being taken care of. You need to come with us for a while.
Whoa.
And in these instances, something really odd would go on. No matter whether it was summer or winter, whether the window was open or not, I would get out of bed and I would stand in front of the window, and they would float me out the window.
Float you out the window.
So sometimes the window was closed, but I never, I don't know how I went through the window or whatever. So that window was the second story, so it was about 20 feet off the ground.
Mm,
And I remember very clearly that feeling of floating and being floated down to the ground and
often.
touching the grass,
Uh-huh.
in my bare feet.
Wow.
And they would I would be taken to a, a group experience. There would be like circles of children,
Mm,
and there were a few adults too around, and then some of the grays. And we were instructed as children to do certain things like um, hold hands and move in a circle or make like a little dance or
like
to
a
sing a
dance,
song.
sing music.
It was like
Mm-hmm.
it was like conditioning group consciousness.
Right. Okay.
Um, and
Interesting.
yeah, and these sorts of things, I call them the children's circles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nothing really sinister would go on. I don't remember any abuse of any kind,
Right.
but it was a serious thing, and there was a threat, definitely.
Mm,
The most memorable experience I had in that regard was, um, I was about 8 or 9. It's about I think I was eight or 9. And it was the same thing, they came and I floated out the window. They brought me down and they brought me to a circle uh, of children, mostly younger than
mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was common. The older I got, the younger the little, the
Children.
other
Yes. Yeah.
other kids around me would be.
Mm-hmm.
And all these kids were in distress. Some of them were crying, and and they were in shock. And I heard things being said like, nothing's wrong. Sing a song.
Yeah, that's
And
the
then,
mental
yeah,
they had, thinking a human being.
yeah,
If they just sing and
yeah,
dance, they'll be fine.
yeah, that's right.
You
Just,
know?
we'll just, yeah, right.
Oh boy.
Thanks a
Just sing
lot.
and dance, will you?
Right. So someone said, and I heard the words in my head,
Mm-hmm.
um, okay, it's your job.
Oh,
You have to get them to stop.
They'll listen to you
And I
because you're older.
and I was like, I'm like 8 years old. I don't know what I'm doing. I just sort of intended, okay, and I intended this. I sent out the intention that we, okay, just everybody calm down and let's just stop. And they did.
Wow.
All the kids stopped. And then they looked at me and they said, well, what do we do? And I said, and somebody said, well, nothing's wrong, sing a song.
Mm.
So we, kind of hand in hand started going around, and we were, I don't know, singing a song of some kind. And we were moving in unison. And, the
swaying back and forth, the dance, kind of a
well,
trance.
kind of like, I grew up Catholic, so I don't know if you ever been to Catholic school.
Oh, yeah.
But the nuns, they have a whole regime. It's like a competition they have with classes, and when you file into mass, you're trained, and there's a whole thing. They snap their fingers, and you go down together.
Yeah.
Snap their fingers, you come up together, and you kneel.
You duck when they throw the eraser at you. Just
Yeah,
joking. I'm sorry. It's
more
happened.
than that.
Bam,
Right.
they were good. Sorry.
Yeah, more than that. So I got, after a while, we were moving in that kind of synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point we just stopped, and we were all kind of then, in one place at one time. We were all in this kind of sense of oneness, connected and quiet.
Mm.
And there was an individual in these sessions, and I've called her the old sister.
Mm.
And she was about 5'2", 5'3".
Mm-hmm.
I never really saw her directly straight on. She wore a cloak with a hood that came down and covered the top part of her face.
Was she taller than the nuns?
Yeah, she was tall. Well, she was
bigger.
about 5'3". She was about the same, size as a regular. That's a lot of nuns, but she
Right.
wasn't as tall as the other humans that were there.
Okay.
But she was like,
The mother-in-law.
yeah,
No.
I mean, she was. She
I'm
was a
missing
force
her.
of nature.
Huh.
She was a force of nature. There was something
Okay.
old and
Wise.
ancient about her.
Hmm.
She was dry. It's like she was so old. Her movement made you just weep for her, because she had to expend energy to move. At the same time, there was something incredibly powerful about her. You could tell when she came towards you or near you, you could feel this power.
Mm.
And, we loved her, or I loved her and I hated her. I loved her and I was terrified of her in equal portions.
Mm-hmm.
And so after we had stopped moving, we were sitting there oneness, I felt her come up behind me.
Mm.
And then I felt her hand. 3 long fingers came to rest on my shoulder, my left shoulder. And it was that feeling of, oh my God, she is behind me. And I don't know why I thought this was she. It seemed like this was a feminine being.
Right.
But she came up behind me. Her hand is on my shoulder, and she's observing me and my group. And at that moment, I stood still like I have never stood still before in my life, because the idea that she was behind me and she was touching me was just insane. It was incredible. And then she said something telepathically to me. She said, I'm very pleased. You did well. Remember well this day. And then, strangely enough, her hand came up and she tousled my hair.
Huh.
She tousled my hair. It was like a total gesture of affection.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I realized somehow that I got connected to her, this joy that was within her. And that joy caused me to kind of sort of shoot up out of my body, straight up into the air. It was just an incredible experience. It was so overwhelming, this sense of joy that I felt.
Right.
And then in the next moment, I was confronted with a statement that represented like the most dangerous threat I'd ever heard. And the words were, after she said, "Remember well this day," she said, "Of you, more will be required later."
Oh.
And at that moment,
They're coming back.
I came back, and my mind is going, required. What later? When later? What? What does this mean? And as a child, you try to, especially experiencing all this weird stuff, I tried to create or put together a coherent sort of barrier between what I recognize as normal reality, or regular reality, and the reality of all this other stuff that was going on. But when she said that statement started to break down that barrier, and I realized at that moment, at 8 years old, that all of this stuff was really, really happening in a normal sense of reality. And that crashed my brain. That I saw the sky starting to, it was starting to get light, and then everything went dark, and I felt myself, faint or falling. And the next thing I knew, I was in bed, and it was morning, and it was like I had just been tucked in, and I was just frightened out of my wits.
Wow. We're going to be right back. Stand by, folks.
Okay.
More.
Mom, you wanted to talk to me?
The calendar hypnosis into thumbtack cushion, completely tailwind. And sewing elephants plant before cartoon paper cups. So numbers renovate.
If your teenager is trying drugs or alcohol, would you know the right words to use?
Afterward, lightly fish scale. Doorbell.
Find out what to say at drugfree.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
And we are back with Matthew. Oh, what a story. More to come. Well, Matthew, so now you're a little older, and we're going to be opening lines, by the way, real soon, folks, so stand by.
Yeah.
But tell me more as you got older, as your teen.
Well, as a teenager, the experiences got more intense, and I also started deciding I wasn't really wanting to deal with this anymore. I'd really been through a lot with it. I mean, it wasn't something I could talk about to anyone, or very many people. If I mentioned something, I would get the eye roll of death. I mean, it's just in the 1960s and 70s, it was not a subject that you could discuss rationally with anyone.
But it commonly happened to a lot of people. A lot of folks went through this. A lot of kids went through. I've heard this story from many different people in different versions. I'm serious. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I would wake up, like at 14, I woke up and I had a scar right at my heart area
Mm.
on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 3 or 4 inches long. It was a scar that was completely healed over from
Wow.
the time I went to bed to the time I woke up. I had scoop marks on my knee. I've got, a triangle scar on my right hand, below my uh, forefinger, below the knuckle. So things were happening, and I wasn't really down with it. I didn't want to do this anymore. And so I decided, well, I wanted to have resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, my Catholic faith wasn't helping me much.
No, I kind of.
I had actually been groomed for the priesthood, but it didn't seem like the, the gods of my Catholic faith were helping me out much.
Did
So
you
I
feel?
began.
Did you feel different most of your life?
Oh yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I was always different.
Mm-hmm. And your mother and father, were they different also? Do you think? I mean,
my mom was quite different.
mm-hmm.
My mom was very psychic,
Mm-hmm.
and she had started having those experiences when she was like me, like 5 or 6.
Wow.
But she was sort of fearful of that, and I'm the one in the family who inherited sort of her legacy or her abilities, and that's why she would actually talk to me about stuff like this, but no one else would. So I began, as a late teen and early into my first year of college, I started reading a lot, like all different treatises from different religions, and I was looking for some kind of a talisman I could use as a weapon to just make, kind of give a little back, make them feel the same kind of things that I felt. Let them know, I'm not going to put up with this anymore.
You're in control.
Yeah, I was trying to take back control. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I get it. Gosh.
But strange things would happen. Like, for instance, when I was about 18 or 19, I was living in a house with some friends, and just kind of drifting. I had gone a year to college, and I wasn't really interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, I was a musician, and I was playing around, doing different things. So I was living in a house with these couple people that were musicians, and that's pretty much what we shared. And well, one afternoon I was listening to some music, and I suddenly it was like 2 o'clock, and I got the urge to get up and go lay down. And I was like, well, wait a minute, why am I doing this? I'm not tired. I slept last night. What's going on here?
Time for you to travel.
I couldn't stop myself from doing this. So I went into my room and laid down on my bed, and I'm looking up the ceiling going, well, what the hell? Why am I doing this? And suddenly I was in another place. I wasn't in that room. I was in a different room. It seemed familiar, but it wasn't the room that, my room in my house in Virginia. And in this room, in the corner, there was a stool, and there was an owl.
There you go.
Like a 3-foot tall owl. And I looked over and I thought, what the heck is that? That looks like an owl. And then there was a woman who appeared, and she was so beautiful. It was like watching a Botticelli in motion. I was spellbound. And she had dark curly hair, about shoulder length. She wore a black sort of dress, she had a cloak on that was black with a red satin border on it, and her skin was just alabaster white, and her eyes were blazing blue,
Those blue
like
eyes.
they were lit.
Yeah.
They were lit almost.
Yep.
And they were larger than normal. And she started talking. She was walking back and forth, and she started talking to me in some kind of a language that, at the time, I sort of understood.
Okay.
And as I would look over. The owl would change, and it would be like one of the grays, a man with a flat face and big eyes. And if I would focus on him, then the owl would appear. And if I would focus on her, then he would, this kind of strange back and forth.
Did their voices get louder and softer as this happened, or they're just the same?
The woman was talking. Her voice was very musical.
Okay.
And she was pacing back and forth, and she was talking to me in this kind of speeded up manner.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at her and I thought, she looks so familiar. What is it about her that's familiar? And then suddenly I realized, well, wait a minute. Is this the little girl that was in the tank next to me when I was a baby? Grown up now? Could that be her? And so my mind is like really racing. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And she looks at me, and she's got this pained look on her face, like, I just don't have any more time. And then she kind of disappears, and the guy in the corner, the owl, changes into the man, or the gray, and he runs over to me, and he's got his face like 2 or 3 inches from my face, and he's got those black, almond eyes.
Right.
And as I looked into his eyes, it was like being eaten.
Wow.
It was like my consciousness was being
absorbed, taken.
Was being taken or eaten.
Mm.
And I was just horrified. I was like, I have to get out.
Wow.
And so I wanted to get away, and I tried to move, and I couldn't move. And then suddenly, boom, I'm back in my room, and I kind of arched up my chest. I arched up, and I heard this crack in my skull, and then this tremendous heat is coming out of my chest. And finally, after about a couple of minutes, I could move again, and I looked over at the clock. Now, I had gone into that room and laid down. It was 2:00, and now it's like 2:15.
Mm.
So not much time had passed. And I was completely, flabbergasted by this whole experience.
Right.
What was the purpose of this? Who was this woman? What was this language she was speaking?
Right.
I thought at the time, maybe this is French or something. I don't speak French, but I understood what she was saying. Well, now, and at the time, there was no word for what was happening. But if I had to describe it now, I would call it downloading. She was downloading a lecture to me about the cosmos, about the Dharma, about consciousness. She was in some way trying to help me in my process of trying to absorb and correlate all this data that I had that didn't make any sense.
There's so much of it, and you're human, and they do their best.
Yeah.
They do their best to give it to you in dosage. He looked into you to make sure that whatever was there and was going to come out properly in their time to wake you up, to take you out of whatever you went to. That's their agenda. You have no control. You have no control.
Well, and time, I'll tell you, the most bizarre thing about dealing with this enigma that I've discovered in my life, it's the whole concept of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, time to us is like it's the foundation of our existence here, right?
Yes, it is.
I mean, everything is related to time, and we have this consensus agreement that it's all the same, right? It passes moment to moment, year to year, whatever, you know.
Right.
But these beings, and I'm not sure how this works, but time has zero orientation to them. It's completely meaningless. They can come and reach you, time, space, it doesn't matter.
No.
They can freeze time, they can stretch out time, they can disappear time. It's just a concept to them that they use that's malleable. To us, it's a static thing. To them, it's not.
So very true. And we'll be right back. We're going to go to the phone lines, everybody. Please stand by.
Okay.
He is back. Now, on UFO Talk Radio, Glenn Larry.
And I am back with Matthew. We're going to open the lines, everybody. You've been waiting for this. It's your time to call in and ask him questions. Share what you've shared, your story. Unbelievable stuff. I've heard it before, and there's similar things that happens to a lot of us.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, unbelievable, but believable, and I do believe it. Everything you just said.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I have reason for that. Big reasons. My sister has reasons also. Family members have reason also.
Yep.
Folks out there, you may have friends that understand this whole thing.
To talk with Glenn Larry, deep in the desert of Nevada, lines are open at 1-702-874-1114. That's 702-874-1114.
We also have 1113 open, everybody. So if you get a chance, maybe you might want to call this number. Go ahead, Ross.
To talk with Glenn Larry, deep in the desert of Nevada, dial 1-702-874-1113. That's 702-874-1113. Once again, here's Glenn Larry.
Oh, yes, I'm telling you, unbelievable stuff happening. Are they here? Are they going to take you? If they take me, I want them to give me some gold and silver on the way back. How about that? Matthew, back on the line with tongue in cheek. I didn't mean to make that fun of that, but I mean, if they're going to take me, I want something more out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
No. I'm serious about all this. This is more and more as this happens to so many people, and they're coming out talking about it. I've had several people on my show, and they'll be back. I got some new folks calling in, want to know more about this stuff. Some people don't want to even say their name, you know, but all they're going to do is just call in, and we'll talk about it. I don't care. Make a name up. That's good. Whatever you want to do. But this is happening. And when little Johnny says, I talked to Billy last night, we were together, we played all night long. Oh, your mom and dad are going, yeah, let's play, mate. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. They dismiss it as a, play pal, fake play pal, or what do they call it? But now, on the other side of that, there's the spirit world. Do you think this ties into it any way or form?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a total connection between the spiritual world and the world of ETs. It's dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I would have to say that this activity is one of the main features that has sort of influenced me to investigate all kinds of different spiritual paths and faiths and thoughts. one of the main influences that's helped me to educate myself
Yes.
about consciousness and reality,
Mm-hmm.
what it means, what we're doing here. Yeah, I think there's definitely a connection between, the ET presence and
The question,
the spirit world.
the question comes up: why me? Why you?
Well, I've asked that question many times. My personal opinion is that and I don't know about all the different ET groups because there's many and they all have different agendas. The ones that were interacting with me, I think that their agenda is, and this goes back to the old sister.
Mm-hmm.
I think their DNA is at its end.
Oh,
I think for a couple reasons. Number one, I think they're ancient. We're relatively new.
Oh, yeah.
Humans are relatively new. But I think these beings, their DNA is ancient, maybe billions of years old. And along the way, they messed around trying to perfect themselves or whatever, and now they can't reproduce anymore. So what I think they're doing is I think they're moving through the population and trying to identify
Mm-hmm.
specific strands and qualities of DNA that they can extract and then mix the best of their DNA with the best of our DNA to create hybrids.
Yes.
So that they can continue on, and that we can somehow advance in some way that they think is useful.
We have a caller. Let's see what we got here. Hello, caller. You're on the line. What's your name and where are you from, please?
Good evening. This is Mr. Thomas.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, go ahead. You're live on the line with Matthew. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Matthew. Yeah, very
Hey,
interesting show tonight, Larry.
Well, thank you kindly.
Yeah, you said in the beginning that Matthew is going to be has a book about his experiences.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is that something that's available now or?
Well, the book is entitled "Hallucinations Don't Leave Scars."
Right.
And I gave Larry an advance copy.
Yes. Well, I didn't say much about the name.
I'm talking to different publishers right now about when it'll be out, and I hope that I can get it up on Amazon and all the other providers. But people can also just email me at 20. That's 20 Medina MEDINA MD @gmail.com, and we can arrange for you to get a digital copy. I can send it to you via email, and I can distribute it to you that way.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question too.
Okay.
With your experiences, did you ever get an idea that any of the global governments were involved with what was going on? Are they aware?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I'll just tell you this one excerpt. This is in my book. It's one of the reasons it's titled "Hallucinations Don't Leave Scars." When I was living in Santa Barbara, and I was a student at Brooks Institute and also on staff there, and I lived on the Montecito campus in a big, in a building that was like a lighthouse.
No, right where it's
at.
at.
It's beautiful. Oh, it was just wonderful. It had 360-degree views of Santa Barbara. It was magical. But I used to have visitations there quite often, and I would feel them come into the room. And at that point, they realized, hey, this guy could express his random violence and do something. So I would feel them come into the room, and then I would spiral down into like a blackness, and then I wouldn't remember anything until the morning. Well, there was one time when I decided, okay, I've had it. I am not going to put up with this anymore. I am going to give myself the post-hypnotic suggestion to wake up at some point during one of these episodes. So here comes, they come into the room. I feel myself start to spiral down into this darkness, this blackness. Then later on, I feel myself, I'm coming back into my apartment. Okay, there's three beings. There's a gray. There's two human individuals, and they're dressed in khakis with purple ascots and purple berets. They have no markings on their uniform except for a blue circle with a yellow triangle patch.
Okay.
And I'm kind of groggy, and I'm looking around, and they can tell
You're
that
coming out of it.
I'm starting to wake up.
Yep.
And one of them says, "Hurry up, he's waking up." So then they lay me down in bed, and this is something that it's so strange. You know, the Greys are like tormentors at one moment, and then the next minute they're laying me down in bed, and I feel someone spooning me from behind, like comforting me, you know.
Right.
So I wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
and I feel like I've been drinking all night. My head is just, I've got this massive headache. My head is all full of cotton. My mouth is all dry. I go downstairs, get some Excedrin and drink some water, and I've got a wound on my right side of my head, right underneath my earlobe.
Right here.
In that little hollow between your skull plate.
Yeah, it's sore.
And and
there's a bone. There's a bone right there, and if you push, you'll feel it. Yeah, I know.
Right in between that bone, and it's like burning. It's hot. It's burning. And so I went through my day, whatever, and I went to have dinner with a friend of mine who's a CHP officer that I'd known for years. He went to school with my brother. He was actually a Brooks grad too. And I showed him the wound, and he looked at it and he said, "That looks like a puncture wound of some kind." He said, "You ought to have that looked at." But for some reason, I could not bring myself to go to the clinic. Every time I thought about it, I got distracted. So after a few days, the swelling kind of started to go down. And after about 3 weeks later, I was in my room, and I noticed that there was like a little lump there, and it was sort of retreating or receding into my system. And I was touching it, and I said, I kind of thought, what the hell is this thing? Right. And a voice, like tuning in a
transmitter.
An AM,
right.
Transistor radio, you know.
Yep.
Kind of staticky.
Oh yeah.
This tinny voice said, "It's a bio-audio monitoring device. Don't worry about it and don't touch it."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I mean,
so
dude, it's unbelievable.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
That governments all over the world, in particularly the U.S., Russia, China, Brazil, Mexico,
they're working
France,
together.
The UK, I know that they
Right
know all about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely, listen, Stephen Greer, you know who Stephen Greer
very
is,
well.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, Stephen Greer has affidavits from 1,000 people from all kinds of walks. They're military people, they're law enforcement, they're defense contractor, whatever. These are all people who will testify under oath about their activity with the government working on ET technology and working with the ETs.
Mm-hmm.
All they want is their national security oath to be waived.
Right.
And they're willing to testify in front of Congress. Now, did they ever get any of those people up there? Hell no.
Mm-hmm. Once you sign that, that can either be for life or a period of time that you work as a contractor. And you have to be debriefed.
That's right.
Sometimes debriefing is not a lot of fun, folks. I'll tell you right now.
Oh, no doubt.
They're very serious.
That's how they've kept the lid on this secret for so long.
Yeah.
Because they frighten people with this national security oath.
Yeah.
So, if Congress really wants to know, they really want disclosure, there's plenty of people out there willing to testify under oath. there's evidence everywhere.
I believe that we're going to have their pants down, and they're afraid about getting spanked in many different ways. I'll tell you, where a lot of this money went to, and but what's been really going on? You know, who are they talking about?
I think what they're worried about mostly is not the release of the technology, but the release of people knowing that they had all this all the time, and they didn't. We could have avoided all kinds of catastrophes.
And all the dirty things they did behind it, like taking people out.
That's what they're worried about.
Yes, they are. Because a lot of them are still alive that were responsible.
Yeah, they're still doing it.
It's unless there's some type of way, and we're getting pretty close to the hour here. Actually, we're a little over. But what's happening is that if we could get all these people together and be able to tell so much and have our own network and really push that, if they'll even put it on the air without cutting us off and interrupting our shows and whatever happens. And you know, folks, you know. Anyway, Matthew, I want you to give your email out again, your full name, and so they'll understand it. And where we can get a hold of you at. Go ahead.
All right. It's Matthew deLellis. That's DELELLIS. And my email is 20 Medina, MEDINA, @gmail.com. You can send me, communicate with me, send me a letter, send me an email. If you've had similar experiences, I'd love to hear about it. If you want a copy of my book, contact me through my email, and I can get a digital copy to you.
I hope we'll have some photos in that book and some drawings by somebody professional, yourself or whoever does it, so they can get a good idea about the storyline, what you're seeing, what you're talking about. Because I was visualizing what was going on and actually seeing it myself. And so, very important to do that. And boy, do I wish you the best of luck with your book. I would like an autograph.
Thanks a lot, Larry.
I want an autograph copy. We're going to have you on again, talk about even more in depth of that book, what's been going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And some stories that you didn't tell in the book.
If you want to give me an endorsement quote, I'll put it on the back.
I'll be more than happy to, sir. I'll be more than happy to. Again, thank you so much. And folks, this is the Glenn Larry Show. Thank you, sir. This is the Glenn Larry Show. Play well, look at the skies, and it's the real deal here, kids. Play well together.